Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, a whole stack of different sources covering current events, political dynamics. Our mission, really, for you, is to try and distill the key insights, cut through all the noise, and give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed without, feeling totally buried in information. We've pulled together quite a mix, stuff on foreign policy shifts, some pretty curious domestic political moves, and even, well, some deeper societal tensions. Think of it like finding those hidden gems of understanding in like a mountain of info so you can really grasp what's actually happening beneath the headlines.
And that's exactly the goal. What's really fascinating, I think, when you look at these sources together is how things that seem completely separate are actually deeply connected. We're going to try and help you see those patterns, connect those dots, and really understand the broader implications of what's going on.
Yeah,
As we go through this, I'd encourage you, think critically. Think about the motivations behind these things, the real-world impacts. There's often a lot more going on under the surface.
definitely. Okay, let's jump right in. First up, some major shifts, starting with foreign policy. We've seen, well, a pretty interesting evolution in Donald Trump's stance on Ukraine. You might remember in the past, he's often blamed both Ukraine and Russia sort of equally for the war, even suggested, if Ukrainians hadn't fought back, maybe there wouldn't have been a war at all. But now the sources show him actually crediting Ukrainians with bravery, saying things like, the Ukrainians, they were very brave because somebody had to operate that stuff, and a lot of people I know wouldn't be operating it. It's subtle, maybe, but it's a real shift, isn't it?
It is.
And frankly, it also seems to highlight his apparent misunderstanding of how U.S. military aid actually works. It's not like a direct cash payment going to Kyiv.
Right. Not at all.
It's mostly contracts for U.S. defense companies, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, creating American jobs here.
You've really hit the nail on the head there. That misunderstanding, or maybe it's a calculated framing, it leads directly to what's genuinely fascinating about his new proposal for helping Ukraine. He now wants NATO countries to actually buy U.S.-made weapons and then give them to Ukraine.
Ah, okay.
So if you connect this to the bigger picture, think about the implications. This basically transforms the war into, well, what could be seen as a kind of profit center for the U.S. defense industry.
Right. That explains the sudden interest, maybe.
It certainly provides a strong motive. And look, NATO allies like Germany and Norway, they've already signaled they're willing to buy Patriot missile systems made by Raytheon, of course. But, and this is important, you have to look at the practical side. The production time is long.
Yeah.
Really long. It can take up to 3 years just to build one full Patriot battery.
3 years, wow.
Yeah, and it costs a fortune, up to $1 billion per battery. So yes, existing stockpiles are crucial right now. But this new plan, it's not exactly a quick fix for Ukraine's immediate long-term production needs.
So it does line up pretty neatly, though, with Trump's long-running complaints about NATO allies not spending enough on their own defense.
Exactly.
And NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he's been, well, busy. Constantly on the phone, apparently, with U.S. officials like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Dan Kane, sorting out these details. Rutte's even heading to D.C. today, the sources say, to discuss this plan with Trump. And he's meeting with Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, too, about sanctions on countries buying Russian oil.
Right, about their bill.
It sounds like a real full-court press to get this new strategy rolling. Do you think this effectively forces NATO to put more skin in the game like the Trump administration wants?
Oh, absolutely. From their viewpoint, it's kind of a win-win, isn't it?
How so?
Well, NATO allies contribute more directly to defense spending, addressing that long-held complaint while, at the same time, boosting the American defense industry. It's a classic case of, turning a geopolitical problem into an economic opportunity. And those long production times you mentioned, maybe that's a feature, not a bug, if the real goal is to create sustained long-term demand for American weapons.
Interesting perspective. Okay, so from these big shifts in global strategy, let's pivot now. Let's look at something happening closer to home inside the government itself. It's fascinating and sometimes a bit perplexing. We're seeing this unusual approach to staffing, where some very high-level officials are juggling multiple jobs, often full-time roles, simultaneously. And this isn't just like a quirky side gig. It seems like a really unusual way to staff critical government positions.
It really is unusual. I mean, historically, you might find rare examples, like Henry Kissinger holding both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor roles.
Right, I remember that.
But those jobs were very closely related, right?
Well,
foreign policy. And Kissinger, well, he was known for an incredible work ethic, deep expertise. The current examples, though, that are detailed in these sources, they seem much more egregious, especially when the jobs are so different or when they're held by people not exactly famous for, say, a strong work ethic.
So as you detail these appointments, it strikes me it's not just odd, it really feels like a pattern. What's the, I don't know, the genius behind this, or maybe the danger? Is it just about loyalty, or is there something more systemic going on?
That's exactly the question. And the genius, if you want to call it that, from their perspective, probably isn't about efficiency at all.
No.
No. It seems more about leveraging the bureaucracy itself, using the structure as a tool for, well, ideological transformation.
Right.
By putting people who are ideologically aligned but maybe underqualified into these key, often very different agencies, they can effectively starve them out or reshape them from the inside, make them, wither on the vine, as Russell Vought, someone we'll talk about, might put it.
Wither on the vine.
Yeah. So it's not just loyalty. It looks more like strategic institutional sabotage, really, designed to disable functions they see as, well, opposed to their agenda.
Okay, give us some examples.
Okay, well, take Marco Rubio. He's a senator, right? He's also Secretary of State. Acting Administrator for USA, that's the Agency for International Development. And he's the acting National Archivist.
The archivist.
The National Archivist. Now, as a senator, let's just say he's not known for being a workaholic. And, okay, State Department and USAD, there's some overlap there maybe. But the National Archives, that's a totally different world. It demands serious focus on history, preservation, record keeping.
Hard to imagine doing all that well.
Very hard. Then there's Jamison Greer. He's the U.S. Trade Representative. But he's also the acting director of the Office of Government Ethics and acting director of the Office of Special Counsel. That's the office protecting whistleblowers.
The irony there, given some past comments.
Right. You do have to wonder how much actual work is expected in those ethics jobs, or if it's more about perhaps keeping things quiet, stifling activity.
Okay, who else?
Sean Duffy, former reality TV star. Now he's Secretary of Transportation and the interim NASA administrator.
NASA? Really?
Yep, talk about disparate roles. Suddenly he's in charge of investigating plane crashes and figuring out NASA's future in the age of SpaceX and Blue Origin, all with, well, no obvious background in either field. The sources suggest it's less about expertise, more about control.
It certainly seems that way.
Then there's Russell Vought. He's the chief architect of Project 2025. That big blueprint for conservative governance, staffing changes for a potential next administration.
Right. Heard a lot about that.
He's also the director of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, and the acting director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. Now, from Trump's perspective, this is seen as a good fit. Why? Precisely because the stated goal is for the CFPB to wither on the vine. And Vaught's clearly busy pushing a specific agenda at OMB. It's ideological alignment over traditional qualifications.
Makes a kind of perverse sense from that viewpoint.
Then Daniel Driscoll, Secretary of the Army. He's also the interim head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF.
Army and ATF, very different.
Drastically different. And the ATF, of course, is a hugely controversial agency. Trump has called it weaponized against gun owners. So this appointment seems to fit right into that critical view.
Okay. Anyone else?
Richard Grinnell. He's an envoy for special missions and the interim president of the Kennedy Center.
The Arts Center.
That's the one. Trump installed himself as chairman there, remember, to purge it of wokeness. But apparently Grinnell's been struggling. Collapsing ticket sales, union pushes, protests from Democratic senators. It looks like an attempt to culturally engineer an institution through an appointment.
And finally,
Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General. He's also the acting Librarian of Congress.
Librarian of Congress.
Yeah. Reports suggest Trump isn't exactly a big reader, right?
Right.
Combined with anger at the library for asking for documents back. This appointment seems to follow from that. Blanche likely has little time or perhaps interest in actually running the library. It sends a pretty clear signal about priorities.
Wow. It really does paint a picture. It feels deliberate, almost surgical, these appointments. Okay, shifting gears again, let's talk about public justifications versus, well, some harsh realities. Here's where it gets really interesting. We've seen Republican senators trying to explain votes for a bill they publicly said they hated. The perceived hypocrisy, especially when reporters corner them, it's been quite something to watch.
It really has. I mean, take Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. She was the deciding vote on a bill she'd been very loudly against.
The key vote.
Exactly. When asked why she voted for it, she talked about agonizing over the decision, basically implying she had no other choice.
But wait, has the deciding vote, didn't she have all the leverage?
Immense leverage. She could have demanded concessions. Her visible discomfort just highlighted that gap between her public stance and what she actually did.
Then there was Ron Johnson from Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, Senator Johnson, a self-proclaimed deficit hawk, right?
Always talking about the debt.
And yet, he voted for a bill that adds, what, $3 trillion to the deficit? His justification was, well, was something. He claimed he didn't want the bill to get more expensive.
So he voted for a massive deficit increase to stop it getting bigger.
Apparently. He also mentioned some forgotten Trump promise about a future deficit reduction bill. The logic, as you can imagine, feels pretty strained. He had maximum leverage before the vote to force changes, but he didn't use it.
Expert, you've laid out some really strained logic from these senators. What's your feel for whether these explanations actually work with their constituents?
Yeah.
Or are voters seeing through the political theater?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, on one hand, you probably have a base that might accept almost any explanation from their party's leaders, or maybe they just focus on the outcome they wanted.
Right.
But on the other hand, these sources suggest there's maybe a growing fatigue among some voters with what feels like political doublespeak. Look at Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming, another deficit hawk. She claimed, we didn't have a choice. They had to vote for it to stop tax cuts expiring.
But wouldn't letting tax cuts expire actually help the deficit?
Exactly. It reveals her real priority was those tax cuts, particularly for millionaires and billionaires, regardless of the fiscal hit. She even falsely claimed her constituents loved the bill when polls showed it was actually pretty unpopular.
So it's not just Murkowski and Johnson.
No, others like Mike Lee also caved. Rand Paul was really the exception. He stuck to his guns. Susan Collins and Tom Tillis voted against it, but reportedly more for electoral reasons. Tillis even announced he's retiring after that vote, seemingly fed up with the whole show, as he apparently called Congress. It just raises big questions, doesn't it? About political leverage, about public accountability, maybe just about self-preservation in politics today. How much is principle and how much is just navigating the immediate political storm?
Yeah, good question. Okay, from the Senate floor, let's head down to Florida, another controversial domestic issue getting a lot of attention. Alligator Alcatraz. Expert, I have to admit, when I first read about this, I really had to double check. It wasn't like fiction, a thriller novel plot or something.
Could hold lightly. I understand.
The description in the sources. A hastily constructed prison on an abandoned airport runway in the Big Cypress National Preserve, ordered by Florida AG James Uthmeier, 6 miles from the Everglades and 50 miles west of Miami, surrounded by an alligator and python-infested swamp.
It just sounds unbelievable. How does something like this even get conceived, let alone ordered by an attorney general?
Your reaction is totally understandable, because the reality, according to reports from detainees cited in the sources, sounds even worse than you might think.
Worse. Conditions are described as genuinely horrible. Think zoo cages under tents. 16 double bunk beds crammed into each cage.
16 in a cage.
16. Reports of only 1 meal a day, sometimes with worms found in the food, and they have to eat it in just 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Toilets don't flush properly, leading to floors covered in fecal matter, mosquitoes everywhere, detainees denied showers, denied essential medical care, even prescription medicines they need. Phone calls are monitored, limited. And there are serious claims of no due process, constant violation of constitutional rights, plus immense pressure, they say, to just give up and self-deport. It seems like a deliberate policy choice.
That's horrifying. And what's really unsettling are the completely contradictory reports from officials and members of Congress who visited. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a Democrat from Florida, described disturbing, vile conditions, called for it to be shut the hell down, talked about insects everywhere.
Right.
But then State Senator Blasey Ingalia, a Republican, claimed it was well-run and safe, said the air conditioning worked fine, they can't both be right.
No, they absolutely cannot. And the sources suggest that, from Trump's viewpoint, Alligator Alcatraz isn't some unfortunate bug caused by hasty construction. It's a feature.
A feature?
Its harshness is precisely the point. It's intended to encourage self-deportation. He apparently even touted it as a potential national model. And you can connect this directly back to his previous PR stunt, as some called it, of separating parents from children at the border. It seems like a recurring theme. Deter migration through extreme, often highly controversial measures. It's designed to send a very clear, very tough message.
A chilling message. Okay, let's turn now to some unanswered questions and these ideological battlegrounds. Starting with a really persistent, sensitive issue, Jeffrey Epstein. The sources describe this scene at the Turning Point USA Student Action Summit in Tampa. Young conservatives expressing what's called free-floating anger about how the Epstein files are being handled. This is despite the Department of Justice saying, there are no such files, no specific client list in that way.
Right, but the anger is real. And the criticism from the stage was pretty direct. Attorney General Pam Bondi was called out specifically by speakers like podcaster Brandon Tatum and General Mike Flynn. Flynn tweeted something like, "The Epstein affair is not going away," and demanded answers about the abuse of children by elites.
Wow, from Flynn.
Yeah. And even the hosts on Fox and Friends echoed some of these concerns, saying there are valid unanswered questions the White House needs to address. It's a rare moment of sort of cracking in the wall of support on this.
And this friction apparently really got under Trump's skin. He issued this very strong, kind of long and rambling defense of Bondi, claimed she's doing a fantastic job. Then he went on to claim the files do exist and were actually written by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and, quote, other MAGA bugaboos.
Yeah, that was something.
But what's really unusual is his direct jab at the base, calling them selfish people trying to hurt his perfect administration, all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. It just highlights this rare instance where he seems completely out of sync with a chunk of his own supporters.
It really does. And Elon Musk even jumped in, tweeting in response, amplifying the questions people were asking. Which makes you wonder, doesn't it? If Trump and Bondi actually had evidence implicating Democrats in those supposed files, why on earth would they hide it?
Good point. That makes no sense.
Exactly. So it naturally leads to the uncomfortable possibility that maybe Republicans, maybe even Trump himself, could be implicated somehow, especially given that widely seen photo of him with Epstein from back in 2000.
Right. That photo keeps resurfacing.
So it seems pretty clear the Epstein story is far from over. And it really could, as one source put it, prove to be an albatross around Trump's neck as we head towards the election.
Definitely something to watch. Okay, from political figures, let's shift to another ideological battleground. Education. Specifically, efforts by conservative graduates to reshape elite universities. The sources use the term sabotage, basically. Alumni actively working to impose conservative principles on their old schools.
It's a really interesting and you could say deeply strategic approach. Look at Gregory Brown. He used to be a fundraiser for the University of Virginia, UVA. He actually joined the Trump administration, reportedly, specifically to lead a crackdown on his own alma mater, even forced out the UVA president, worked to destroy the progressive culture, according to these reports.
It's from the inside out.
Exactly. Then there's Daniel Wasserman, former Harvard Law Review editor, apparently clashed with liberal classmates there. Now, he's leading an investigation of the Law Review as a White House employee. And Josh Gruenbaum, an NYU alum. He apparently confronted pro-Palestinian activists back in the day. Now he's on a Trump task force investigating anti-Semitism on campuses.
So they're using alumni who had negative experiences.
That seems to be the idea. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt explained the motivation. She said Trump wants people with lived experience, people who felt isolated as conservatives at these elite schools. And Stephen Miller, the Duke grad, is reportedly leading this whole charge. The goal? To kill off all DEI programs, diversity, equity, inclusion, and imbue future students with a conservative worldview.
Yeah.
Miller hires these alumni, supposedly, because, in his words, they know the enemy well. It's a very deliberate, inside-out strategy for cultural change.
Fascinating and a bit chilling, depending on your perspective. Okay, let's pivot one last time to the upcoming electoral crossroads. Shifting political landscapes. Starting with a key question posed in the sources. Will Ernst be the next to go? We're talking about Senator Joni Ernst, the Republican from Iowa.
Yeah, there's real speculation swirling around her, largely stemming from one specific widely publicized incident.
The town hall comment.
Exactly. At a town hall, a constituent confronted her about potential Medicaid cuts, saying people could die. Ernst's response was infamously, well, we are all going to die.
Oof. Not a great soundbite.
Not at all. It went viral instantly, really damaged her image, and it led to whispers that maybe she'd rather drop out of the 2026 race than risk losing. Adding to that, her fundraising in the first quarter of 2025 was described as just acceptable but nothing spectacular. Fuels the uncertainty.
So she does step aside. The field could get pretty interesting in Iowa. Representative Ashley Hinson, who's a top fundraiser in Iowa's House delegation, she's seen as the likely Republican replacement.
That's a thinking.
And on the Democratic side, State Senator Zach Walz and State Representative J.D. Scholten, they're already in the race. Now, Iowa has shifted pretty red lately, but as the sources note, an open seat race is generally more competitive than one with an incumbent running, so maybe a blue wave could make it competitive.
It could. And this creates a real strategic calculation for Democrats, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
what's the calculation?
No, well, would they rather run against a known quantity, a badly damaged Ernst, carrying that baggage? Or would they prefer facing a new challenger, maybe Hinson, who comes with no baggage, but might be a stronger campaigner?
Tricky decision.
It is. You can bet the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the NRSC, is pulling that state heavily right now, trying to figure out Ernst's actual viability and presumably letting her know what they find. Their internal numbers will be key to her decision.
Right. Okay, let's jump over to another high-stakes Senate race. Texas. This one involves State Senator Angela Paxton, a Republican, and her husband, the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He's challenging Senator John Cornyn in the primary.
And Ken Paxton, well, he comes with a significant amount of baggage.
Understatement, maybe?
Perhaps. He was impeached by the Texas House, remember? Charges included bribery, abuse of power, obstruction of justice. During his Senate trial, his lawyer actually used what's now famously called the 100 years defense regarding allegations of infidelity.
Hold on, the 100 Years defense. Just remind us what that was again. Basically, they argued that if every instance of alleged infidelity in Austin led to impeachment, the whole government would just grind to a halt for a century.
Slight chuckle. That was essentially the argument, yes. A unique legal strategy, let's say.
You could say that?
And, incredibly, it worked. It prevented his conviction in the Senate, so he's still the Texas AG.
Right. And here's the latest twist. Angela Paxton, his wife, just gave the GOP establishment what one source calls a giant gift. She filed for divorce from Ken Paxton on biblical grounds, accusing him of adultery after 38 years of marriage.
Wow.
Her husband's reaction, blaming it on the pressures she faces as a state senator.
Predictable, maybe. But this has potentially huge implications for Ken Paxton's Senate ambitions.
How so?
Well, the NRSC, the Republican establishment, they are reportedly desperate to get rid of the AG. They see him as a major candidate quality problem, someone who could actually lose a general election, even in deep red Texas.
So this divorce is ammunition for Cornyn.
Absolutely. Cornyn and the NRSC will almost certainly use this divorce filing to paint Paxton as, well, a disgusting scumbag, to quote the source material. However, there's a catch. The judge has sealed all the divorce records.
So the details won't come out.
Right. Texas voters won't know the specifics, which could lead to conflicting stories, conflicting narratives, battling it out in public. And then there's the Trump factor. That's the big unknown. Paxton is seen as very Trumpy. If Trump backs him strongly, that could really mitigate the damage from the divorce.
True. Trump's endorsement carries a lot of weight.
It does. Plus, voters often have short memories. By the time the primary actually happens next year, the impact might have lessened.
So it's complicated.
Very. But stepping back, if you look at the bigger picture, what this really highlights is how control of the entire U.S. Senate could genuinely hinge on these kinds of messy, personality-driven races in states like Iowa and Texas. Especially if a few other scenarios fall into place for the Democrats. Like, say, if Governor Janet Mills challenges Susan Collins up in Maine, or if former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper runs for Tom Tillis's open seat, or if Senator John Ossoff draws a weak opponent down in Georgia. It's like this complex puzzle, right? Many different pieces would need to fall just right for the overall balance of power in the Senate to actually shift.
What a journey we've taken today. Seriously. We started with those shifts in foreign policy, Trump's new profit center angle on military aid. Then we dove into that strange situation of officials holding multiple, often really different government jobs, that whole strategic approach to wielding power from inside the system. We saw Republican senators tying themselves in knots trying to explain votes they apparently hated. We looked at the grim realities of Alligator Alcatraz. We touched on those lingering Epstein questions causing friction within the conservative base, and looked at how conservative alumni are trying to reshape elite universities. And finally, we explored how these very personal, very political dynamics in places like Iowa and Texas could actually end up reshaping the Senate. It really shows how crucial it is to cut through that information overload to see the deeper currents, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And maybe this all raises one last important question for you, the listener, to think about. How do all these individual stories, these shifting loyalties, these questions of personal ethics, these complex political maneuvers, how do they all add up? How do they contribute to the bigger story of governance, of public trust, especially in this incredibly polarized environment we're in? How might this whole mosaic of seemingly unconnected events actually shape the future of political leadership, political accountability, and what does it mean for the information that you consume and ultimately that you trust?
That's a great final thought. These details we've unpacked today, they aren't just random incidents. They really are threads in a much larger, more complex tapestry. We definitely encourage you to keep digging, keep doing your own deep dive, and ponder how these dynamics are playing out in the world around you.